Oops.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Give a few minutes to get everybody in. All right. Welcome, welcome. This is the 38th Tutorial Tuesday that we've done. And it's the second in our series for December, which are these quick knits with worsted weight yarn. Yeah, and Laura's here with us tonight. I'm Suzanne Nielsen, if you're just joining us. And Laura had finished her hat. Why don't you show us your hat?
I did.
There? Sorry, I just put her on the spot there, but
no, it's fine. I had just put it away, which I don't know why I did. I should have brought it. This is Howard. Was it Howard's Tam or Howard's
Howard's
hat?
Tam. Yep.
Howard's Tam. It is a lovely cabled hat that we talked about last week, and I will put a link in the chat in just a moment to the YouTube channel where we put all of our previous Tutorial Tuesdays. So if you want to go back and see that, it's got a double brim. It calls for the brim to actually, it calls for it to be joined together, but I did not join one. I also added a little bit of, I added one extra repeat on the cable because I had enough yarn and I wanted to make it a little bit slouchier. So it's not super slouchy, but there is just a little bit more room up there, as you can see, and it's nice and cozy. The skein of yarn that I had in my stash, kind of left over from other knits, was the Nightshade worsted in the Xena colorway. That was left over from when we knit our rye socks back in October. So for those of you who tune in with us often, I just keep using the same yarns and working on new projects. So this is nice and cozy. I don't know if I'll keep it or if it will be a gift, but that was that one. So tonight we're working on a different pattern, and I will let Suzanne introduce it because it's one of hers.
Yes. So this is the Double Delight Cowl. So it is just a nice simple cowl with a little bit of interesting kind of lace stitch here, which I'll show you, and then it looks good on both sides, thus it's called Double Delight. Also, I have it written, both charted and written, and you can either work it flat or in the round. So that's kind of the fun thing, is you can kind of choose how you like it. You might want to knit it flat if you just despise purling, because it does have this garter section, which when you're in the round, for garter, you have to knit one round and then purl one round to get garter stitch. But when you're working flat, it's just knit on both sides. You do still have to do a little bit of purling in the lace section, but I will show you that. So tonight, let's see, I'm going to switch over. Oh, we forgot to say that we are doing $20 gift certificates too. So open your chats and pay a little bit of attention. And Laura's going to ask those questions in the middle. But now I'm going to switch over to my camera here. All right, and show the, well, first I'm going to show the cast on that I used in this. I used a Slipknot cast on, and I do that because in this garter stitch, the Slipknot cast on really just disappears. It just looks like the garter stitch just finished. So that's why I like this cast on, but feel free to use a different cast on if this one is just too much of a pain. It is a little bit of a trickier cast on, and we have shown it before, I think, in a different tutorial, but I'm going to show it again. So for this cast on, you do just make a slip knot and place it on your needle. And then there's a couple different ways to do it, so I'm going to show you. So if one way doesn't feel right, then hang on and try the other way. But what we do first is we take tail out of the way, take the yarn and make a loop with your thumb, and then you can put your index finger into that loop and hold that loop above the needle, far above the needle, with the cross. You kind of like shimmy the cross that's in the yarn. Let me see if I can turn that. I thought these long needles would be easier to see, but they're kind of hard for me to maneuver. So the cross, you want to make sure that that cross is close to the stitch that's already there. And then you just do a yarn over with the yarn that's on your thumb, and you take that loop over and off the needle. And then you can kind of stabilize the stitch by pinching the stitch on either side and then pulling the yarn. And you can kind of wiggle and find an angle where the yarn pulls easily. So what you're doing is just making a whole series of slip knots. The other way to do it is it accomplishes the same thing, but it's a little different. You still take your thumb behind the yarn and make a little loop, but then you go into that loop, go into the loop and go grab the working yarn and pull the working yarn back through the loop. And then you need to kind of shimmy and shake and get yourself close to this other knot that will determine the spacing and how neat your cast on looks. And then again, you stabilize it with your fingers. You can put your thumb on the top, or you can, I like to stabilize on both sides, and then pull so that it pulls tight, and then you have another one. All right, so either you do this where you're making a little, sorry, you can see it in the camera here, making a loop, going through that loop, grabbing the yarn and pulling it back through the loop, and then shimmy, 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 pinch and pull. Or you can do it the way where you make that loop and you put the loop on your index finger and then put that loop over the needle, get it close here, and then do your yarn over and pull the loop over. You can shimmy a little bit here too. You'll find that at first, sometimes you try to pull and it just doesn't pull very well. And that's where you need to just kind of work it around. As you practice and you get better, it will become easier and it will get faster. And that pull won't be so hard. I like this cast on again because it just disappears. It also is very stretchy, but you do want to make sure that when you look at it, your knots are about evenly spaced, and that will keep your cast on edge looking neat. What you don't want to happen is something like this, where you see a big gap between the stitches, and you'd see like this big loop right here. So in that case, you just take it out and pull it out. All right, so now going on to the rest of the pattern. So, the pattern is, like I said, it's written and charted, and you can either work it flat or in the round. So right here, I just have a little section that is with the garter. Sorry, here's the garter stitch and here's the lace section. But what's happening in the cowl is you have 3 sections that are this lace and 3 sections that are garter stitch. So there's 17 stitches that are in the garter stitch, and then there's 13 that are in the lace. If you wanted to use DK weight yarn and go down in needle size, but you still wanted to make it the same circumference, you could do a gauge swatch and figure that out, and you could add stitches into the garter stitch sections. That would be really easy. You could also add a repeat in the lace sections if you wanted to, but I think it'd be really easy to just add stitches in the garter sections. When you're knitting in the round, you're always on the right side of your work. So this is what is considered the right side of the work when you're actually knitting. So if you're in the round, this is what the right side looks like. Now, the reverse also, maybe it's not showing up all that well on camera. It also looks nice on the reverse. You kind of get this, like these cross hatches, which are hard to pick up kind of here, but also this particular cowl that I'm showing you, I held fingering weight doubled to do this one. So that's a possibility as well, but it really works nicely with the worsted. So let me show this. For this section, I just have it worked flat. But what is happening in the lace section is you have just like 3 purl stitches, 1 knit stitch. So it's just 3 knits and then 1 or 3 purls and then a knit. And then they're staggered. So I'm going to show you the the tricky stitch, which is the center double decrease. So here we just have some knit. This is for the garter section. So those are the big garter section is just knit. And then the lace section, we do continue. So you have a knit stitch here, and then a yarn over, and then we're going to do a double decrease. So that's taking 3 stitches down to 1 stitch. But what we want to happen is the center stitch to kind of be the one that's in the front. So in the pattern, it tells you how to do this too. You're going to slip 2 stitches like you, or like you're going to knit them together. So normally when it says to slip a stitch, you slip it purlwise, but in this case, you slip 2 stitches as if to knit 2 together, and that twists them around. Then you place those stitches back on the left needle and go into the back of that 3rd stitch, and then knit all 3 of those together. And what that does is rearranges the stitches. So you can see that center stitch kind of comes forward, and then the other 2 get knit together behind that center stitch. And then another yarn over, and then a knit 1, and then yarn over, and we're going to do the same thing. So another trick with the center double decrease is to just save a little bit of time. You don't necessarily have to slip those stitches off. You can go into those stitches knitwise, and then into the back of that 3rd stitch, and then do your yarn over. And it's not as complicated as it looks, although it will be when I'm doing it on camera here. But you're going to knit those 2 stitches together, go into the back of that 3rd stitch, wrap your yarn, and then just follow your way out. And like I said, on camera, it looks a little trickier than it actually feels, but it accomplishes the same thing. So it still rearranges it so that that center stitch is in the front, and the other 2 stitches go on. So again, and then yarn over on either side of it. So knit 1, then the way the pattern has you do it, just for easiness sake, is to slip 2 together as if to knit 2 together, and then place them back on the left needle and go through the back of that 3rd stitch and work them all together. It is a little easier to get through in this way because they're all like lined up to let you come out, but give the other way a try too. Oh gosh, and there I forgot to put my yarn over in front of that. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that now. I'm just going to slide that stitch that I just made back on this needle. I'm just going to kind of pull my yarn across and pick up that yarn over and then go back. And now another yarn over. So I want, when you're working on this lace section, you always want to have yarn overs on either side of your center double decrease. And then working back, it's just the same, or just working those stitches. So you will, well, here, if you're knitting it in the round, this stitch will get knit, and then these 3 will get purled. So you kind of offset. So you can see what's happening here. You have like 3 purl stitches, then they get worked together and become a stockinette column. And then, so the 3 stitches, and then above the stockinette column becomes a 3 stitches of purling. But when we turn, it's a little different when you're working back, but that's all written out in the pattern and charted. So we're going to take a little break. Then I'm going to answer any questions that come up, and then I'll show you the cast off too.
Okay, so open your chat windows. We have 2 $20 gift cards for tonight. Tonight, I'm going to pick number 5, who answers the question correctly. The first question is, what cast on did Suzanne demonstrate?
And this cast on, it is in the pattern. And I do have a very short YouTube video on that cast on as well. But like I said, these are all recorded. So if you want the whole recording of, tonight, then you can rewatch those.
It looks like my fifth is Deborah Sue. You can go ahead and message Zen Yarn Garden, and she will get you set up with your $20 gift card.
Yay.
The second question, the second question is, what number Tutorial Tuesday is this?
Oh, good one.
We did say it right at the beginning.
Yeah. They're close, so they got it.
Okay, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I've only got 4 that are correct so far, so I'm going to give it to the fourth. It's E. Macario. Go ahead and message Zen Yarn Garden.
Yay, congratulations.
Okay, and this
Yeah,
is
38th
Tutorial Tuesday. I did put a message in the chat. If you have any ideas for Tutorial Tuesdays, we are looking for them. We have one more Tutorial Tuesday coming up next week when Suzanne is going to talk about her, are they schoolhouse mitts?
Yeah, Stitch School.
Stitch School mitts. And then we are going to take a break for the holidays, and we are going to skip the first week in January and come back the second week in January with new Tutorial Tuesdays. We're working on ideas for those right now. So if you have anything you would like us to cover that we have not covered yet, you can email us or just put it in the chat tonight, and I will take a list of those. So I'm going to give it back to Suzanne and let you go on.
All right. So I will, let's see.
I don't see any questions so far.
I don't see, okay.
Go
I
ahead.
did get one question about the cast on again. So I'll show the cast on again quickly after I go back through, but let me switch over to my camera, sorry. And I'm just going to show as I work along. So this one on the reverse side, I need to be knitting these, and I purl the one that got worked together. So I don't know if you can see it, but I'm just working back so that I can bind off on the correct side. And if any questions come up, there's a lot of different ways to do that center double decrease. You just have to think about what you want to accomplish. So think about which stitch you want to be in the front to lead, and that determines how you do the center decrease. So anyway, that's a good one to keep keep in mind. All right, so on this one, oh gosh, did I forget my darning needle? I think I did, but I can do it with this maybe. So when you are binding off, I do the, I like to do it's just a sewn bind off, which we did on the socks, right? Summer socks, is that what had the sewn bind off, Laura, do you remember?
Good.
Anyway, I think Shayna showed us the sewn bind off last time. So, but the sewn bind off is nice because it looks really good in garter stitch. So it doesn't leave like a chain on top like a lot of cast offs do. It's still stretchy, but it just looks like garter stitch. So we have a nice finished cast off that looks like garter stitch, and we had that nice cast on that also looks like garter stitch. And that's why I chose those for this pattern. But what you do is you'll cut your yarn, and then I am not going to be able to find my darning needle in time, but I am going to use a safety pin. So, and we can show you, I can show you with that. So for the cast off, actually, I'll cut my yarn and do that. So what you'll do is estimate your tail. You can estimate about 3 times the length of your knit. But if you run out of yarn, it's not that big of a deal either. You can just add more yarn and then weave in that end. So don't stress too much about it. But you do cut your yarn, and then you'll weave your, you'll use a darning needle, except for me that can't find my darning needle right now. All right, so what happens in the sewn bind off is you go through two stitches, and then back through one stitch, and then take that one stitch off the needle and then pull. This is how I keep my tension consistent. A lot of people will go through two stitches. Goodness, it's easier with a darning needle, but they'll go through two stitches and pull, and then they'll go back through one stitch and take it off the needle and pull. I find that I can keep my tension a lot more even if I, before pulling, I go through the two stitches. Again, easier with the darning needle. Sorry about that, guys. Through two stitches, but then before I pull my yarn all the way through, I go back through that first stitch and take it off. And then I pull my yarn. And I don't know, for me, it just keeps it a little bit more consistent. You can try your own and see what works better for you. But again, it's just through two stitches, and then back through one stitch and off the needle with that one stitch, and then pull. And you do want to kind of check yourself as you go along that you're not pulling too tight or too loose. Just make sure that it kind of looks like about the same tension as your knitting. Yeah, so anyway, that's a good cast off to learn to know too when you want something that just kind of disappears, but it is stretchy, and it doesn't leave that chain across like a normal cast off would do. So, all right, any questions come up so far?
I'm not seeing any in chat.
All right, well, we have a little, maybe a couple extra minutes, so I will just show the cast on again. But like I said, I'm a big fan of, you know, just do what you feel like. If this one is too annoying, then skip it. The other trick with this cast on is, you know, it is a little bit, especially if you're on a circular needle, it tends, you can twist it and it's hard to do it. So I would always just work back one row flat and then join in the round.
Oh, I know what you talked about that you didn't demonstrate though. You
Oh.
talked about what you would do if you don't want to knit the garter stitch in the round.
Oh yeah, then you just work it flat.
In which case, so you just sew it up at the end?
Yes, sorry. So yeah, so you work the whole thing flat. The pattern is written that way too. So okay. you can do either way. And then yeah, you do have to do one seam then at the end.
Got it. I wanted to touch on that because at the beginning you said you were gonna.
Yes, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, so let's see. So back to cast on. Again, it's making this loop with your thumb, and then it's just like, it's a little bit like long tail, where you make a loop and then go through that. I mean, it's not quite like long tail because you don't have the slingshot, but when you make this loop, you grab it with your thumb, make that loop that you can go into, and then go grab the working yarn and bring it back through that loop. And then you want to do this like shimmy, shimmy, shake, get it close to the stitch before, so that when you pull, your spacing is even. And if your spacing isn't even, then just take it out and do another one. This is one of those cast-ons that really does take a little bit of practice to get fast at it. So, and then the other way is to make that loop on your thumb and then put that loop on your index finger and hold it above the needle with the needle inside. Then you do a yarn over and bring that loop over. So it's doing the same thing, it's just doing it in a kind of different order. I actually learned this way first, so sometimes I'm a little faster at it, or I kind of default to it. But I think this way, where you just go into the loop and grab the yarn, might be a little easier to I don't know, to learn. So I would try both ways and see which one you like. Yeah, so that is it. All right. Any other questions here? Last minute before we finish up, or suggestions for next year? Goodness, I can't believe it's already a year.
No, you're flew by.
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, like I said, we have one more Tutorial Tuesday for this year. That will be next week, same time, same bat channel, same hosts.
And you're already signed up for it. If you're on this one, you're going to get the email, right?
You will get the link in your email on the day of, and then we'll take 2 weeks off for the holidays, and just because we know everyone's going to be busy, and we will come back in January. What about a class or two on changing yarns for patterns? Oh, that's okay. I will write that down. That's a tricky one, but we
yeah, that's like, you know, one of those that's there's so many different variables, but we could definitely talk about it and touch on it and see.
Oh, and fixing holes when picking up stitches on socks and sleeves. That's a good one.
A good one too. Yeah.
Closing the holes on your socks, and then also at the corners of your armpits on your sleeves.
Yes.
Yes, that is a good one. Okay, I'm going to write these down and send these to Roxanne, so she has them.
Yep, she tells us what to do and we just do it.
Yeah.
It works well that way.
Doesn't it though?
Yay. Thanks so much for joining us. And yeah, we'll see you next time. And we'll see some of you too at the blanket knit along.
Yeah, we've got the blanket knit along coming up on Sunday. And if we don't, so Ellen says she's enjoyed the project tutorials where you sign up for a series. So maybe we'll do a few more project-based next year.
Cool.
Okay.
Right, yay, thanks guys.
Good night.
Post pictures too. We love to see pictures.
Yeah.
Good night.